accounts. The person who can hurt you the most is usually the person you trusted without limits. But what if the real mistake was never trusting them? What if the real mistake was believing everyone deserved the same access to your mind, your emotions, and your life? Yeah, you were probably taught to trust people, give them the benefit of the doubt, and believe that everyone deserves a chance. And those are good qualities, but without wisdom they can become weaknesses. The problem is not trusting people. The problem is trusting people before they have shown you who they really are. There is a powerful difference between being kind and being naive, between forgiveness and forgetfulness, between loving someone and giving them unlimited access to your peace. Stoicism teaches us to look at reality clearly, control our responses, and stop handing our emotional power to people whose behavior we cannot control. Pleiadians, once you learn this, you do not become bitter. You become difficult to manipulate. You become calmer, wiser, and more selective with your trust. And that shift can completely change the way you approach friendships, relationships, betrayal, criticism, and your own emotional life. There is a moment in life when you realize that trusting everyone is not kindness anymore. It is a weakness you have never questioned. You keep giving people access to your thoughts, your plans, your emotions, your vulnerabilities, and sometimes even your peace. You assume they have the same intentions you have. You believe that because you would never betray someone, they would never betray you. But then someone you trusted says something behind your back. Someone you defended becomes the person who hurts you. Someone you thought would protect your confidence uses it against you. And suddenly you begin to understand something painful. Not everyone deserves access to you. The strongest person in the room is not always the loudest. Sometimes it is the person who has learned to observe before trusting, to think before speaking, and to remain calm when someone tries to provoke them. Strength is not becoming cold. Strength is learning that your heart can remain good while your judgment becomes wiser. You may have spent years believing that being a good person means being completely open with everyone. You tell people what you are planning. You explain your problems. You reveal what hurts you. You tell them what you fear, what you want, who you love, what you are trying to accomplish, and what you hope will happen next. Then one day, something changes. You realize that some people were never listening because they cared. They were collecting information. Pleiadians, that realization can hurt, but it can also transform you. There is a moment in life when you realize that trusting everyone is not kindness anymore. It is a weakness you have never questioned. You keep giving people access to your thoughts, your plans, your emotions, your vulnerabilities, and sometimes even your peace. You assume they have the same intentions you have. You believe that because you would never betray someone, they would never betray you. But then someone you trusted says something behind your back. Someone you defended becomes the person who hurts you. Someone you thought would protect your confidence uses it against you. And suddenly you begin to understand something painful. Not everyone deserves access to you. The strongest person in the room is not always the loudest. Sometimes it is the person who has learned to observe before trusting, to think before speaking, and to remain calm when someone tries to provoke them. Strength is not becoming cold. Strength is learning that your heart can remain good while your judgment becomes wiser. The Stoics never taught that you should hate people or live your life suspicious of everyone. Their lesson was much more disciplined. They understood that wisdom requires judgment. Epictetus taught that we should pay attention to what is within our control and not surrender our inner stability to things we cannot control. And one of the things you can control is who receives your attention, your trust, your secrets, and your emotional energy. Think about how much power you give someone when you trust them completely. You give them the ability to influence your emotions without even being present. A message from them can make you happy. Their silence can make you anxious. Their criticism can ruin you. Their approval can make you feel valuable, while their rejection can make you question yourself. That is not freedom. Imagine a man who spends years trying to please everyone around him. At work, he says yes to everything because he wants to be respected. In his friendships, he hides his disagreements because he does not want conflict. In relationships, he constantly sacrifices his boundaries because he is afraid of losing someone. He thinks he is being loyal, but slowly he becomes exhausted. He begins to resent the very people he tried so hard to please. One day, he finally asks himself a question that changes everything. Why am I giving people so much control over my peace? And that question is the beginning of strength. You do not become stronger by assuming everyone is against you. You become stronger by realizing that everyone does not need to be close to you. There is a difference between being friendly and being accessible. There is a difference between respecting people and trusting them with everything. There is a difference between forgiveness and giving someone unlimited opportunities to hurt you. By you can wish someone well and still keep your distance. Banjas, you can forgive someone and still remember what they taught you. Benj, you can love someone and still refuse to let them control you. This is where Stoic thinking becomes incredibly powerful in modern life. Marcus Aurelius lived surrounded by political pressure, conflict, betrayal, ambition, and people who wanted something from him. Yet he repeatedly reminded himself to govern his own character rather than become consumed by the behavior of others. He could not control what another person intended. He could control how he responded. And that distinction can save you from years of unnecessary suffering. Someone insults you, you cannot control their words, but you can control whether those words become a permanent residence inside your mind. Someone lies about you. You cannot control what they say, but you can control whether you spend every night trying to prove yourself to people who have already decided what they want to believe. Someone breaks your trust. You cannot undo what happened, but you can decide what you learn from it. Plander, that is the difference between pain and wisdom. Pain says, I will never trust anyone again. And wisdom says, I will trust differently. That distinction matters. When people are hurt, they often swing from one extreme to another. First, they trust everyone. Then someone betrays them, and they decide nobody can ever be trusted again. But that is not strength. That is allowing one bad experience to control your worldview. The stronger approach is discernment. You do not need to believe every word someone says. Watch what they repeatedly do. Words can create an impression. Patterns reveal character. Someone can tell you they respect you, but watch how they behave when you disagree with them. Someone can say they are happy for your success, but observe how they behave when you receive something they wanted. Someone can promise to keep your confidence, but notice whether they constantly share other people's secrets with you. If someone tells you everyone else is fake, ask yourself why they know so many secrets. Character reveals itself through patterns. This does not mean becoming paranoid. It means becoming observant. There is tremendous power in learning to stop explaining yourself to everyone. When you become comfortable with silence, you stop feeling the need to announce every decision. You stop telling everyone what you are building before you have built it. You stop seeking approval for every move. You begin to move quietly. And there is something deeply powerful about a person who no longer needs everyone to understand them. Then suppose you decide to change your life. Maybe you want to become more disciplined. Maybe you want to leave a toxic relationship. Maybe you want to start a business. Maybe you want to improve your finances. Maybe you simply want to become calmer and more emotionally stable. You tell everyone, some encourage you, others laugh. Someone tells you that you will probably fail. Another person reminds you of every mistake you made in the past. Someone else secretly hopes you do not change because your growth makes them uncomfortable. Now imagine you had said nothing. You simply worked. You woke up earlier. You practiced your discipline. You learned. You failed privately. You corrected yourself. You continued. Months later, people noticed the result. That is a different kind of power. Bane's not because you fooled anyone, but because you stopped allowing other people's opinions to become part of your decision-making process. Seneca understood the danger of living for the approval of others. When your happiness depends on being admired, you become vulnerable to anyone who knows how to withhold approval. If someone can make you desperate for their validation, they can influence your behavior. Think about that carefully. Termed, if someone knows exactly what you fear losing, they know where to push. Bond, if they know you cannot tolerate rejection, they can use distance against you. Band, if they know you desperately need approval, they can manipulate you with criticism. Demellist, if they know you are afraid of being alone, they can convince you to accept treatment you would never advise another person to tolerate. This is why emotional independence is such a powerful form of self-protection. You do not need everyone to stay. Baines, you need to know that you will remain standing if someone leaves. That mindset changes relationships completely. You stop begging, you stop chasing, you stop over-explaining. Baines, you stop tolerating disrespect simply because you are afraid of losing someone. And strangely enough, when you stop being terrified of losing people, you become more capable of having healthy relationships with them. Blend, because now you are choosing them rather than needing them. Bond, there is another lesson here that many people discover too late. Not everyone who knows your pain deserves access to your healing. Blundius, some people genuinely care about your struggles. Others become fascinated by your weaknesses because they give them a sense of power. You have to learn the difference. Bendy, a mature person does not reveal everything simply because someone asks. Privacy is not dishonesty. Silence is not weakness. Den's boundaries are not cruelty. You are allowed to have parts of your life that belong only to you. Tomlin's, your future plans can remain private. Your deepest fears can remain private. Your financial situation can remain private. Bend, your relationship problems do not need to become public entertainment. Your next move does not need an audience. Damn, the less you need to explain your life, the more peacefully you can live it. But there is an even deeper lesson. Sometimes the person you need to stop trusting is not another person. It is the version of yourself that constantly assumes the worst. You might say, I knew they would betray me. Dullian, but did you really know? Or were you carrying an old wound into a new relationship? Munder, there is a difference between intuition and fear. There is a difference between discernment and suspicion. Mulliens, if you have been betrayed before, your mind may begin searching for evidence that betrayal is happening again. A delayed message becomes a warning. A change in someone's tone becomes proof. A disagreement becomes the beginning of abandonment. PNDU, this is where mastering your mind becomes essential. You cannot build a peaceful life if every uncertain situation becomes an emergency inside your head. Bend, the Stoic approach is not to blindly trust. It is to examine reality without allowing fear to write the story for you. Ask yourself, what do I actually know? Go, not what do I fear, not what do I assume. Bend, not what happened 5 years ago, what do I actually know? Dans, that simple question can prevent you from destroying good relationships because of imagined problems. Strength requires both caution and openness. Blamed, you should not hand everyone the keys to your house. But you also should not build a prison around your heart because one person once abused your trust. Damned, trust should be earned through consistency. Respect should be demonstrated through behavior. Closeness should develop gradually. No, and your peace should never depend completely on another person's behavior. There will always be people who misunderstand you. There will always be people who criticize you. There will always be people who talk about you when you are not there. If you make your mission in life to control everyone's opinion, you will never have enough energy left to control your own character. Marcus Aurelius faced people who misunderstood him, opposed him, and challenged his authority. Yet the deeper challenge was always internal. Could he remain honorable while surrounded by people who were not? Pedants, that is your challenge too. Can you remain kind without becoming naive? Can you remain open without becoming careless? Ben, can you forgive without forgetting the lesson? Can you trust without surrendering your judgment? Bongus, can you walk away without becoming bitter? That is real emotional strength. And perhaps the most important change happens when you stop measuring your strength by how many people you have around you. Being a crowded life can still be a lonely life. Demands you can have hundreds of contacts and very few people you can genuinely trust, so stop chasing quantity. Look for character, look for consistency. Look for people who are happy when you grow, honest when you are wrong, respectful when they disagree, and present when life becomes difficult. And while you look for those people, become that kind of person yourself. Banja, because the goal is not simply to identify trustworthy people. The goal is to become someone whose own character does not depend on whether other people behave perfectly. Debender, when you stop trusting everyone, you do not become colder, you become clearer. You begin to understand that access to your mind is a privilege. Access to your deepest emotions is a privilege. Access to your private life is a privilege. Not everyone deserves the same level of access. And that realization can change everything. You become slower to react. You listen more carefully. You observe more deeply. You stop believing promises without evidence. You stop confusing attention with loyalty. You stop confusing familiarity with friendship. You stop confusing apology to change. And suddenly people cannot manipulate you as easily because you are no longer responding to words alone. You are watching patterns. That is when your peace becomes harder to steal. And if someone tries to provoke you, you pause. If someone tries to pressure you, you think. If someone tries to make you feel guilty for having a boundary, you examine their intention. Banja, if someone walks away because you refuse to betray yourself, you let them walk. That last one is difficult. But sometimes losing a person is not losing your future. Sometimes losing a person is finally recovering yourself. The strongest version of you will not be someone who trusts nobody. It will be someone who knows exactly where trust belongs. So from this moment forward, do not promise yourself that you will never be hurt again. That promise is impossible. Promise yourself something more powerful. You will pay attention. You will think before you trust. You will judge people by patterns rather than promises. You will protect your peace without closing your heart. You will forgive without surrendering your boundaries. And you will never again give another person complete control over your emotional state. Because people can disappoint you. Circumstances can change, relationships can end, plans can fail, but your character remains yours. Your judgment remains yours. Your response remains yours. And when you finally understand that, you stop living as someone who is constantly afraid of being betrayed. And start living as someone who knows they can handle whatever comes. That is the freedom the Stoics were pointing toward, not a life without betrayal, not a life without disappointment. Not a life where everyone is trustworthy. A life where another person's behavior no longer determines the quality of your character. If this message gave you a new perspective on trust, boundaries, and emotional strength, take a moment to like the video. And if you want more practical Stoic wisdom for building discipline, self-respect, emotional control, and inner strength, subscribe to Daily Stoic Dose and continue this journey with us. Rant, because you do not need to become suspicious of the world. Balines, you simply need to become wise enough to move through it with your eyes open, trust carefully, love deeply, observe quietly, and never surrender your peace just because someone else has failed to protect theirs. Italians, the world does not become safer when you trust everyone. Blaines, you become stronger when you learn who deserves your trust, and when you realize that no matter who stays, who leaves, who praises you, or who misunderstands you, you can still stand firmly within yourself. Baines, that is when trust becomes wisdom instead of weakness,